I really think that this is an exciting event. It is exciting because it honors people who are communicators, communicating the reality of life as it is for people who have disabilities.
The Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities presents the 39th Annual Barbara Jordan Media Awards 2022. Introduction and welcome. Dan Cavanaugh, Interim Dean, College of Liberal Arts, the University of Texas at Arlington.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Barbara Jordan Media Awards. My name is Dan Cavanaugh, and I am the Interim Dean of the College of Liberal Arts here at the University of Texas at Arlington. We are so excited to virtually host the awards this year at UTA. As you may know, our unique combination of strengths housed in our academic programs, as well as the success of our championship adapted sports teams, make this an especially meaningful event to host. Our Department of Communication is a diverse community of engaged, award-winning scholar educators, enthusiastic students, and dedicated staff. Our students are able to choose from majors in 7 areas of specialization, including journalism, broadcast TV and radio, communication technology, and mass communication. We also have 2 certificate programs and a robust master's program. On top of university scholarships, over $75,000 was awarded over the 2020 to 21 year as the result of the generosity of departmental family, friends, and alumni supporters. Our Disability Studies program in 2013 began offering the first Disability Studies minor in the entire South. The minor now has approximately 165 current students and graduates. By housing this program at the college level, the program is a strong example of interdisciplinary work and how we are able to infuse a strong understanding of disability studies into whichever major students pursue on campus. Our students graduate prepared to infuse their talents, deep understanding, and enthusiasm into whichever careers they pursue. Our campus has been recently honored by the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities with the 2018 Lex Frieden Employment Award for our Model Barrier-Free Campus Initiative. UTA is also one of the largest universities nationwide to house an adaptive sports intercollegiate program. Our men's Moving Mavs basketball team is UTA's winningest team with 10 national championships. Our Lady Moving Mavs are also growing into a powerhouse team, having claimed the national championship twice since 2016. Go Mavs! We continue to expand these programs and now have an adaptive athletics sports club. We are proud that our programs serve as national models. Congratulations to the award winners today. We are excited to partner with the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities for the 2022 Barbara Jordan Media Awards.
Keynote speaker, Beth Haller, author, Representing Disability in an Ableist World, Essays on Mass Media.
Hi everyone, my name is Beth Haller and I'm the keynote speaker for the Barbara Jordan Media Awards. I'm the author of Representing Disability in an Ableist World. I've been studying media representation of disability for 30 years or more. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at University of Texas Arlington's Disability Studies program, an adjunct at Towson University's Disability Studies program, and an adjunct at City University of New York's Disability Studies programs. And I teach about media and disability. So I thought I'd kick off my keynote looking at a winner from 2020. So this is an article that was in the Denton Chronicle, Record Chronicle, headline, Disability Rights Advocates Online Vigil Honors Unseen and Unheard Voices. So it was coverage of an event held by North Texas disability rights advocates that sought to highlight the need for more community living opportunities and better equal rights for Texans with disabilities. And I highlighted this because it focused on a significant disability topic that should be covered, which was better community living options and equal rights. It was hosted by Free Our People Project, and the image is of a woman named Beverly Black, who has a disability and literally escaped from a disability institution in North Texas and is now a disability rights advocate. So anyway, I'm going to go through what I think makes a good story about disability and give some tips and comments. So what journalists should consider. So first is that disability stories are on every news beat. Whether you're a sports reporter, a business reporter, education reporter, there's something about disability that can be written about, whether it's the Paralympics or a new elementary school, whether it's going to be fully accessible or have a quiet room for autistic students. There's lots of stories out there. You'll have to ask about them because a lot of people don't realize they should be highlighting what they're doing about disability access at their locations. So every news beat, there's disability stories that you could be doing. And these stories should be about substantive disability issues rather than kind of those feel-good features about individuals. And it's not that I dislike the feature stories, but a lot of times they're put into the news instead of a substantive story about rights or access, something that people need to know about because we need to change society to be more accessible for people with disabilities. You can start those stories with a featureized lead if you need to have a feature kind of twist to it. But really the substantive issues are really important because they haven't been covered as enough yet. Also, covering the disability community should realize that disabled people have many facets and not defined by their disability. So just remember they're like any other source. And sometimes you might have a disabled source on a story that has nothing to do with that disability, and that's fine too. The other thing to become aware of are the laws and policies that are trying to protect disabled people from discrimination and to give them equal access to society. These make really good stories because businesses and governments continue to violate these laws, even though the ADA was passed in 1990, so a very long time ago. The big problem still in many news stories about disability is that people with disabilities are presented as, quote, medical problems, not as people. There's still a big problem with kind of medicalizing disabilities when that's not the story 99% of the time. And writing stories in a way that makes readers and viewers pity disabled people can be a big problem. A lot of journalists don't know they're doing this. They think they're highlighting somebody's inspiration or overcoming, but instead they're putting into the minds of these readers and viewers that there's something wrong with disabled people. So I'll get more on that in a minute. Stories that present ordinary people just living their lives as some kind of inspirational hero known as super crips. So this is a problem too, because if somebody's just going to the grocery store, it's not a story. Somebody's just going to school or work, it's not a story. But sometimes these become stories just because a disabled person's doing it, and that can be a problem. Stories that make disability rights and getting access to society like every other American seem like a problem or is too expensive. There's been a long history of a lot of businesses and local governments crying about how expensive it is to become accessible, even though, like I said, the law was passed in 1990 and they should become accessible back in the mid 90s. And also not acknowledging that society's barriers and negative attitudes are the real problems for the disability community more than an individual's disability. So a few stats now. So Texas has more than 3 million disabled people. The total in the US is 61 million disabled people. So in Texas, approximately 54% of Texas 75 and older have a disability, and overall 11.84% of females and 11.81% of males reported having a disability. But it's not just disabilities are not just with older people, as we'll see in a second. And here's some graphs from the Census Bureau and I forget what the data on the bar graph is from, but anyway, it's number of individuals with disabilities in Texas and percent of individuals with disabilities by age and gender in Texas. I have 2 pages of references at the end of this Keynote PowerPoint, so all the information will be available to you. So most disabilities are not apparent or chronic illnesses. So you're not going to see the person's disability potentially, but those disabled people deserve coverage too, and their issues deserve a lot of coverage. People can't see their disabilities. The CDC numbers illustrate the wide range of disabilities that may not be visible. So these are just a list of different functional disability types. So, 4.6% of people have vision issues, 5.9% have hearing issues. So both of those may be not apparent. Some may have independent living issues or cognitive issues related to concentrating or brain-related disabilities. So lots of percentages of people that you don't see their disability. So that's really important when you're covering news too, that you're covering people that have unseen disabilities. And then the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is leading to more Americans with disabilities. This is from a report in 2022 from the Disability Justice Initiative of the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. The headline is, COVID-19 likely resulted in 1.2 million more disabled people by the end of 2021. Workplaces and policy will need to adapt. So it also says workplaces will need to adapt to significant increases in both disabled population and the disabled workforce, and future labor market analysis must center disability. So this is from February 2022. So things are changing. There's going to be a lot more need for coverage of people with long COVID and other disabilities related to the pandemic. So long COVID became recognized as a disability under the American Disabilities Act in July of 2021. This is a story that I highlighted on the slide from the Austin TV station KVUE from 2021. And it's a picture of a woman, and it says former ASID, Austin Independent School District teacher, fighting to get her job back. The headline said workers with long COVID protected under the American Disabilities Act, and that it was added. So this teacher was trying to, after she started recovering from some of her COVID symptoms, was trying to get back to work and was denied that. And she was able to fight using the fact that now that she has a disability diagnosis, she's protected by the ADA. So this is going to be a big story in the next 15 to 30 years, because long COVID is going to start affecting people, not necessarily right after they had COVID, but it could be, 5 to 10 years happening. Actually, let me jump back to something I reported on back in the 1980s, which was post-polio syndrome. So I did a series of stories for the Amarillo newspaper back in the 80s when I worked there as a print news reporter about post-polio. And these were people that had polio but didn't have any disabilities from polio. Then suddenly 30 years later, they're wheelchair users and they have disabilities from their polio. So my fear is that's what's going to happen with long COVID. People that think they recovered 15, 30 years from now are going to have significant disabling conditions from long COVID that they thought they recovered from many years before. And so the guidance on long COVID as a disability under the ADA, I have a link there from section 504 and section 1557. So you can read more about long COVID as a disability. So back to reporting. So this is Haben Girma. She wrote her memoir a couple of years ago. the deafblind woman who conquered Harvard Law. And there's a picture of her on the cover of her book. So she believes, and I believe, that disabled people should be sources in all stories on a disability topic. And she has a thing she wrote for her website about what she'd like to see. She gets interviewed a lot, and it's really interesting to watch her be interviewed, especially in video form, because no matter what they want to talk about, she's able to turn it to disability rights, since she's a disability rights attorney. And so she has had a lot of interaction with the media, and because she's deafblind, they want to turn her into a story about inspiration, and she wants to talk about access and civil rights. So the three things she says are spotlight disabled voices, avoid assumptions, and challenge yourself. So for spotlight disabled voices, she says that stories about disability have a disturbing pattern of marginalizing disabled voices in favor of the voices of the non-disabled parent, teacher, or friend. So that can be a big problem. And people, even with intellectual disabilities, can give consent. So you should be talking to the actual disabled people involved in the story, not their parent or caregiver or teacher. Avoid assumptions. There's many disability myths, and they're so entrenched in our culture that people assume them to be true. So I'll talk about more about that in a minute too. Challenge yourself to create a disability story without using the word inspiration. She, like I, want to kind of get that out of stories, because that's not news. That's not, usually not true either. So where to find these disabled sources? So these are two websites that could be very useful to you as a reporter in Texas. First is Disability Rights Texas. It's a protection and advocacy agency for Texans with disabilities. The story on the website that I have is a picture. It says family wins appeal for Medicaid benefits for daughter. Their daughter has a very rare chromosomal disability, and so they had to fight to get the Medicaid benefits that their daughter needed. The other is from olmstedrights.org. So Olmsted is a case that guaranteed that disabled people have the right to live in their community and not in institutions. So they have resources for every state. And so this is just a picture of the Texas Disability Resources and Advocacy Organizations here in the state. Also, social media is a great place to find disability sources. So this is hashtag disability Twitter, disability writers and activists to follow. If you go onto Twitter and put in the hashtag disability Twitter, you'll find a lot of activists and writers that are talking about disability issues, all of which might make a good story. And the person who did the story for Upworthy about disability Twitter back in 2016, is actually a person with a disability. And I have a quote from her article that says 1 in 5 people, now it's 1 in 4 people in the US live with disabilities, but somehow the voices of disability advocacy still have yet to be heard around the world, mostly because folks aren't aware the community exists. And there's a picture of somebody with glasses looking out at the world. It says the world's largest minority is speaking out. This is what they have to say, world, meet disability Twitter. And it was an article by Liz Jackson. Other possible sources from other social media sites. And of course, every organization has a Facebook page. So Facebook is kind of ubiquitous now, but there's also disability activists all over Instagram and TikTok. So this is a grab from an article that says how young disability activists are using TikTok to make a difference. A young African-American woman with blonde hair is looking at her phone and is a wheelchair user. So just a couple of different articles that you can find out there that have lists of different disability activists. So quote, 6 disability activists to follow on Instagram from Think Inclusive, 11 disability activists to follow right now from Mashable. That's just an article from a few weeks ago in March of 2022. 11 Black disabled creators you need to follow on Instagram right now, the Rolling Explorer. 7 TikTokers educating their audiences about disabilities. So there's a lot of people out there that really want to be your sources about disability issues and know it from all aspects. And so they can be really good sources for your stories. But also don't assume about disability language either. This becomes a big issue, especially for print reporters. The Harvard Business Review had an article about disability language in 2020. The headline was, "Why you need to stop using these phrases, these words and phrases." And so she talked to a lot of disability advocates, including me, for the article. And the quote from it says, "Language has long been used to dehumanize or marginalize people with disabilities. Ableist language shows up in different ways as metaphors, jokes, or euphemisms," end quote. And the name of the writer of this article was Ravi Shankar. So a few comments from the disability community about writing about disability. First was, acknowledge the disability around you. The more conscious we become of the disability around us, the less we are likely to stigmatize it as, quote, something that needs to be fixed, and look at it as it's something that is. Second, learn, learn, learn. It's important for everyone to use the resources put out by disabled people. Quote from autistic disability justice advocate Lydia XZ Brown, quote, "Look for articles, books, videos, podcasts, and other work by disabled writers and activists. Use these tools to learn about the way discrimination or ableism works," end quote. Third, don't make assumptions about someone's identity. Clarifying questions about identity show respect to the disabled person. Fourth, when you make a mistake, genuinely apologize. This isn't about your opinions, it's about how the other person feels. Ravi Shankar, 2020. And another writer and advocate, Emily Ladeau, is a podcaster and disability rights activist. She wrote an article called "4 Disability Euphemisms That Need to Bite the Dust," end quote. And there's a picture of her sitting in her wheelchair with one of her feet up. And the first word she wants to get rid of is the word challenged. She says, every human faces challenges. For disabled people, the challenges come from societal barriers and discrimination, not a physical impairment. The second, handy capable, she says, quote, cutesy and dripping with condescension, almost like a verbal pat on the head, end quote. Third, differently abled. This is inaccurate. No human body has a standard set of abilities. People do things in very different ways. And fourth, special needs. She says, quote, my needs are not special just because they're not met in the ways identical to the needs of non-disabled people. I need a ramp, you need steps, not special, just facts, end quote. So a lot of these folks are giving you resources for language when you're writing, and they can also be good people to talk to as sources as well. And then another thing I will highlight, with full disclosure, I'm on the board for the National Center for Disability and Journalism, which is based at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University. But we have an online style guide with pages and pages of content, so you know what questions you might have about disability language answered there. It's now available in both English and Spanish, so we highly recommend it. It's a quick link, ncdj.org/style guide, and you'll be able to find it. And we put a lot of thought into our discussion of different terminology and concepts. So, and if you have questions, feel free to contact the center. So the other thing I want to highlight is journalists learning about the American Disabilities Act and other disability rights laws, because I think there's still a lot of kind of misinformation, or people forget that these laws exist and they just think, oh, the disabled people are suing, or the disabled people are upset about something. The reason they're upset is because this law was passed in 1990 and it's still not being enforced fully. And so this is just a highlight of it from a story from NBC DFW in 2016. The headline is North Texas woman with service dog denied service by Uber files federal complaints. So she runs her own business and she needs to use Uber because it's much less expensive than a cab. But in those first years of Uber, and still today, they've had suits against them. Many of the Uber drivers, because they're have a different employee structure than a cab system, don't realize that they have to take, it's under the ADA, they cannot discriminate against somebody who needs a service dog or a guide dog. So they have to let them into their vehicle. But lots of disabled people and blind people talk about how the Uber just drives away and they can't get to their meetings or their appointments or whatever they need to do. So this woman has cerebral palsy and can't walk long distances. So the service dog helps her get around. And so was denied one time in just 1 week. She was denied 5 rides where they just pulled away and didn't let her and her service dog get into the Uber. So, this is the way people are using the ADA to finally get access, and the story is good because she actually works a lot from home, and she only needs to get places she lives in Mansfield, and she needs to get places in other parts of North Texas, a few times a month, and she can't even get those appointments done because the Uber drivers won't pick her up. As I mentioned about the problem with inspiration, journalists should focus their stories on newsworthy disability issues rather than their wrong perception that disability is, quote, inspiring. So you're avoiding what's called inspiration porn in your stories. Australian disability activist and writer Stella Young is the one who coined the term in 2012. There's a picture of her. She was a little person who used a power wheelchair. She did a 2014 TED Talk on the topic of inspiration porn, explaining that disability does not make her or anyone else exceptional. And this has become kind of a big problem for a lot of news stories and feature stories. They're presenting ordinary disabled people as inspiring and therefore objectifying them in the eyes of non-disabled people. So non-disabled people use those stories from the news media of disability to feel better about their own lives. These stories are not uplifting. They're actually focused on the journalist's perceived belief in the tragedy of the disabled person's life. These stories wrongly celebrate what is actually a regular daily life activity for everyone, including disabled people. So this is kind of an area where I think journalists need to kind of become more self-aware and understand that if they're seeing a disabled person and they're thinking, oh, that person is so inspirational, they need to start looking at why they think that. If the person is not really doing anything exceptional, they think they're inspirational because the backside of this inspiration is that they actually are perceiving that person as having a tragic life. So just the fact that they're out and about, they're thinking that they're doing something inspiring. And this is a really insidious problem that needs to be dealt with. And I think a big part of dealing with it is understanding that that is based on your wrong beliefs as a journalist, not on the fact that somebody is actually inspiring. And the remedy to this is actually covering news. So it's really easy remedy. Just focus your stories on the many newsworthy topics about disability. I have a little picture here. I think it's from an Indiana disability organization. It's of a gentleman, African-American gentleman who's blind and has his white cane with him, and he's smiling and tipping his hat. And he says, "I'm not your inspiration, I'm your neighbor." And so, yeah, he should be a source in a story about his neighborhood, but he's not a story about a blind man going to the grocery store. So significant issues that are more newsworthy. There's a whole long list. I just have a few ideas here for you. Violations of the American Disabilities Act, good stories there. They're still being violated in every community in America. Lack of accessibility in many aspects of society, possibly even including your own newsroom. So look inward, news media, to see whether you're accessible too. Voting rights, there's been a lot of stories recently about changes in how we're voting that are going to be problematic for disabled people having access to their American right of voting as a citizen. The Affordable Care Act and Medicaid, always changes happening that could impact the disability community. Assistive technology that can be fantastic and changing the lives of lots of disabled people. Unfortunately, poverty is a big issue because a lot of disabled people live in poverty because of the discrimination in society and lack of resources. Abuse and violence against disabled people. There's a lot of bad people in the world, and a lot of them take it out on disabled people. Discrimination in employment and education. People with disabilities want to work and go to school like everybody else, but a lot of times are blocked by lack of access and discrimination. And the ongoing crisis in home care fueled by the pandemic. In lots of states, people's family members are having to care for their disabled family member because there's no home health care workers available, and they're paid so poorly that they've gone off to get a better paying job at McDonald's or somewhere. And so it's a crisis. People need home health aides, and there's not enough to help people in their homes. So just lots of newsworthy stories. Nothing about inspiration needs to be in those stories, but they need to be covered. So really the ultimate goal should be accurate, authentic coverage of disability issues. This is just a picture of people at a protest with signs that say "Shut down ableism, disability rights are human rights." So the last two slides are my references. So we're going to be posting the PowerPoint with my keynote, so you can see all the references, so you can find any of the information that I've spoken about. So thank you very much for having me as the keynote speaker for the Barbara Jordan Media Awards. Take care, everybody.
Radio. Shelley Brisbin. How to ensure your holiday celebrations welcome people with disabilities. Texas Standard, KUT.
For someone like me that has a hearing disability, when people host virtual celebrations, you want to make sure that the platform you're using has the ability to provide closed captioning. So someone with a hearing disability can feel included, can participate in the conversations.
One of the things that you'd always want to be sure that you do if you have a blind person in your group on an online meeting is begin by saying, "This is Sharon, and my opinion is this and this and this." And then when you're finished, you signal that. "This is Sharon and I'm done."
This is Anthony Vasquez with Nobility. If you're inviting a blind person to an event, make sure that you give a quick introduction of the space that they'll be in. There's a table in the middle of the room. You've got a few sofas to the right. Something short like that is a great way to get your guests a little more comfortable. This might be the first time they go to this home. I guess around these days, let them know if there are any lit candles.
So one of the things that everyone should absolutely do for the dinner table this year is they should have a clear mask that allows somebody with a hearing disability to read.
For a quick tip for anybody who's inviting a person with a physical disability to a physical space, it's always good to, again, research the space. is there an accessible entrance? The last thing you want to do is create this great gathering at this awesome restaurant that has steps on the way in and nothing else.
I think sometimes people are intimidated by disability and they're afraid to acknowledge it. But people with disabilities understand that they have disability, and it's not a thing of shame. It's not something to be awkward about. So it's perfectly acceptable to ask people, what would you like? Would you like to take my elbow so I can show you to a chair if you're blind? Would you like me to push your wheelchair? But always give people the respect to ask them what it is that they prefer in terms of your personal interaction with them.
I'd like to express my thanks to the Governor's Committee and to the judges for selecting my story to receive this award. I also want to express my appreciation to my colleagues at the Texas Standard, who support my work to tell stories about people with disabilities for our statewide audience. The impetus for my story about making holidays more accessible for people with disabilities came from the folks at Nobility here in Austin, who produced their own webinar on the subject. I learned a lot from my conversations with Nobility staff, and I certainly hope our audience gained some practical knowledge as well. In my newsroom and many others, journalists have been thinking a lot about diversity and inclusion. When we're doing things right, that means we tell the stories of people who represent a wide range of racial and gender identities. But less attention has been paid to covering issues affecting people with disabilities or finding ways to ensure that our voices are heard both in front of and behind the microphone. For me, this award is a reminder to continue doing this work, and hopefully a reminder to news professionals that inclusion means full participation by people who experience all kinds of disabilities. Thank you again for this award and for recognizing my work.
Print profile. Gregory Ripps. Patrick Kelly gets his life back. Wilson County News.
Print. Patrick Kelly gets his life back by Gregory Ripps, Wilson County News. Anyone who has seen a three-wheeled contraption with the U.S. Marine Corps logos sailing along the roadways near Shannon Ridge has caught a glimpse of U.S. military veteran Patrick Kelly on his recumbent bike. He's been preparing himself for a major cycling event in late August, his biggest cycling challenge yet, the 2021 Great Lakes Challenge, a route more than 400 miles long. I was averaging 50 miles a day, Patrick said. Now I'm working my way up to 100 miles a day. He can also reach speeds of up to 55 miles per hour going downhill. I don't want to go faster than that, he said. Too much vibration. The bike's design allows Patrick to propel himself using his legs, while not demanding much of his feet, back, arms, and neck. When not using his recumbent bike, Patrick spends most of his waking hours in a wheelchair. All I ever wanted was to be a Marine, Patrick said. When I was in, all I wanted to do was stay a Marine. Unfortunately, a number of injuries during his military service ultimately cut his career short. Patrick then entered a dark period in his life. Outside his beloved Corps, he resigned himself to life in a wheelchair and increasingly took opioids to deal with his pain. The drugs produced their own problems. I would fall asleep in my food while sitting at the dinner table, Patrick remembers. I would forget a conversation 2 days after talking with someone. I lost my first wife. I was depressed. I saw no future, he said. Eventually, however, things looked up for Patrick. He fell in love with one of his care providers, Andy, and the two married. Then, in 2016, he was introduced to We Are Project Hero and a recumbent bike and the new challenges they afforded. The more he rode, the more he got off medications. It gave me back my life, he said. The pain never changed, but biking gave me more fortitude to endure it. Biking also reduced his stress levels, banishing suicidal thoughts, and provided the veteran with the camaraderie he hadn't encountered since he left the military. While biking during various Project Hero events, He gets to know others, such as veterans and law enforcement officers with their own injuries, who have their own stories to share. It's the closest thing I've ever found to the Marine Corps, Patrick said. Operating a recumbent bike also gives the rider a different status. Everybody treats you different in a wheelchair, Patrick said. When you get on a bike, nobody treats you like you're in a wheelchair. I feel free, he continued. I can keep up with guys with perfect legs. They see me as a competitor.
When my daughter was small, an adult asked her what her father did for a living. I was close enough to hear her answer. He doesn't really do anything. He just writes about what other people do. There is probably a lot of truth in that, although my embarrassingly long time in newspaper production, public affairs, and journalism has required me to do many other things than write. While I have garnered a few awards over the years, I've never been oriented myself toward winning awards. In fact, when I pursue a story, I don't necessarily know where the story will take me. Thus, when I pursued a story about a man who rode a recumbent tricycle, I had no knowledge of what the contraption was. I learned from Patrick Kelly that it enabled him to ride long distances and compete with others using the strength of his legs without putting pressure on his back. I then learned why this was important to Patrick. Any other man suffering a fraction of the injuries he endured over his career as a Marine might have satisfied himself with limited mobility, or like Patrick, for a while, find dangerous comfort in drugs. But with the encouragement of his wife, help from an organization, and his own determination, Patrick overcame despair and renewed his commitment to living an incredibly active life. I want to thank Patrick for his inspiring story. I want to thank the Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities for the Barbara Jordan Media Awards competition and the opportunity to win this recognition. I want to thank my employer, the Wilson County News, especially publisher Elaine Kolodzi and editor Nanette Kilby-Smith for enabling me to write on a variety of subjects. And I want to thank my wife, Norlin, for all her support, and our daughter for giving me an insight into my profession.
Podcast. Dr. John C. Bullion and Pam Humphrey. Loving students doesn't lower expectations. Sped Talk with Pam and John.
Welcome to Sped Talk with Pam
and John,
also known as The Calm.
Before the Storm.
Our purpose is to elevate the conversation and amplify special education resources.
And our why is about making the impossible possible.
I mean, I don't mind sharing my whole story, but I don't feel like I do anything extraordinary. I just do what I need to do for my kids. I tried for 9 years to have kids, and within 17 and a half months, I had 2. And so it was a little bit shocking, but I didn't really have anything to base what you would call normal on. There's not really a normal, I guess, but I didn't know what to expect. I thought they were just these little things that they did were just boys being boys. And I mean, I had nephews, but they didn't live with us or close to us. Didn't really have anything to base that on until Jaden started school. Jordan is my oldest. Jaden is my youngest. When Jordan started school, he had a really good pre-K teacher that would tell me what he did for the day, which was always something. There was never a day that he didn't do anything. But then she would always compare him to a great man in history, Einstein or, whoever. So I just thought, oh, great. I mean, he's wonderful. But he always did something. There was always a behavior, always. And so he was 4. And then Jaden started when he was about 3.5, maybe. But when he went to school, he was a runner. And at home, I just always I'm extra cautious with everything. I worry about everything, try to take care of everybody around me type of person. And so nothing I did, I thought was something that was, I didn't think he was doing anything because I had already set him up for success, I guess, not realizing what I was doing.
How hard you were
And
actually probably
then
working at keeping everything in play and both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And you said you felt like you weren't doing
Yes.
anything. You were being like superhuman here doing all these things.
My oldest one, when he was in his crib, would flap his arms. And we just thought it was the cutest thing because he was just so excited. We had no idea that it was a sign of autism, but he wasn't fine. Of course, I had notes from the school, notes from the Sped team, just all from the doctor, from West Texas Rehab. I was ready. I was like, I want to know what's wrong. I found a letter from a mother to a school about her son for the upcoming school year and what to expect. And I was like, well, that's not Jaden, that's Joran. I was like, okay. The more I read, the more it looked like Joran and not Jaden. And I'm like, okay. So then I got the referral for both of them to West Texas Rehab. Then, and I told Dr. Tomasovic that the school thought that Jaden was autistic. And he said, he is. They both are. And it's okay.
There are defining moments in everyone's lives. For Nikki McDaniel, receiving the diagnosis that both of her sons had autism was one of those moments. More importantly, having a wise doctor who said, they are still the kids you came in with. His comment helped her shape her expectation for her sons and also for herself.
Nikki's story goes from parental love to educational impact. As this amazing mom of two sons with autism describes her journey to becoming a teacher who sees the potential in all of her students, the high expectations and unconditional love she has for her own two sons is also experienced by each and every one of her students. It is often said, there's nothing quite like the love of a mother. And kids don't care how much a teacher knows unless they know how much the teacher cares. Teaching each as though they were her own, Nikki McDaniel, first grade teacher at Brady ISD, understands that loving students doesn't mean lowering expectations.
We want to express that Sped Talk is a collaboration between several education service centers and want to acknowledge that Sped Talk team, which consists of Jennifer De Leon, Anna Dieter, Evan Heckman, Patty Garcia, and Monica Quezada, each of whom helped make Sped Talk what it is.
We also want to express our gratitude to Dr. Jennifer Alexander, Dr. Justin Porter, and Jennifer Patterson from the Texas Education Agency for their continued support of the Liaison Project, without which Sped Talk very likely would not exist.
Most importantly, we want to thank Connie Neal, Director of Special Education at the Education Service Center, Region 15, for introducing us to Nikki, and more importantly, to Nikki McDaniel for having the courage to share her story with the world.
Receiving the Barbara Jordan Media Award for the second year in a row for Sped Talk is so humbling and validating to Pam and I, and we can't wait to see what comes next. Thank you.
Newsletter, Dion McGinnis. A Wrangler's Tale, The Wrangler Gazette.
A Wrangler's Tale. What has life been like for someone who has been at New Danville since the day it opened? That is a Wrangler's tale. That is Brooke's tale, and that of her parents, Diane and Jerry. I remember the first day, Brooke said. It rained so hard. Water was running through the tent, but I came back. It was 15 years ago that she first attended New Danville's day habilitation program. About 18 months ago, she was able to move to Meadowbrook, New Danville's residential community. Jerry said they had the tent, the cabin, and that was it. Oh, and porta potties. Diane smiled with an observation. Things have certainly changed here. The cabin has become a classroom and food pantry, and has been joined by homes for 36, a greenhouse, 2 classroom buildings, the recently dedicated Charbonneau family building for pallet manufacturing, and more. Amidst all the changes over the years, Brooke and her parents have been involved in just about everything New Danville has ever offered. When asked what the most important change was for her when she moved to Meadowbrook, Brooke was quick to answer, friends, being social. She nodded often as Diane expounded on what it means to the family, including their pet dog, for Brooke to be a part of a community and a typical lifestyle. She and her friends socialize, and Jerry and I come up to spend the weekend with Brooke sometimes in her place. Her place. That makes all the difference. Independence is special. Jerry and Diane volunteer much of their time to New Danville. Jerry helps out in the wood shop, and Diane at Jazzy Junk, along with the help they provide at various activities such as the recent Christmas marketplace, where Wranglers were able to shop for free to get presents for their loved ones.
Thank you. This is an honor, a humbling honor. More so, it is my honor to share the stories of our clients with the world. New Danville's day program participants are affectionately known as Wranglers, thus the name of our new newsletter, the Wrangler Gazette. A weird career path brought me here. Well, divine providence did. Within a few days of starting at New Danville in March of 2021, as the organization's first ever development director, I was inspired to write a blog posting on my personal website. It was titled, Everyday Saints and Angels, Every Day. That pretty much described everyone I encountered, staff, Wranglers, providers, family members, everybody. The stories had to get out. I have a great boss and we have a great team that supported the concept of the Wrangler Gazette. Eva Aguirre, our president and CEO, and Randy Smith, our director of operations, thank you both for the opportunity to be part of the New Danville family. With every interview I conduct and every photograph I create for the Gazette, I learn more about the stories and the people, those with special needs and those who serve. Those stories had to be shared. So voila, a newsletter was born in June of 2021. Rob is one of our residents. He often meets me in the morning at my usual parking spot. We like to think that we solve the world's problems before the workday starts. One morning, he told me that he wanted to be featured in the newsletter. He even offered to write the piece. There was something in his voice, something in his expressions. I said, Rob, I think I hear you saying that you have a story to tell that you wish people knew. You want people to understand something that you don't think they do. Am I reading you right? He didn't reply, which is unusual for Rob. And I think I saw his eyes well up behind his transition lenses. He nodded, patted me on the shoulder and said, have a good day. We had a great interview a few days later. I shared his story in the January issue in the section titled A Wrangler's Tale. There is so much to be learned simply by engaging with those with special needs. Within a month of starting here, I created a presentation titled Live, Learn, Work, Grow, Wisdom from Under the Windmill. Live, Learn, Work, Grow is our tagline, and the windmill is part of the logo because of our rural environment. The presentation offers 15 tips on life and living gleaned from the Wranglers. I've taken it to churches, service organizations, and much more. We all have so much to learn from our special needs population, including authenticity. As I came to work one morning a few months ago, I encountered Robert in the hallway. How are you doing today, Robert? I asked. I don't know yet, he replied. Could there have been a more honest answer? I could go on and on and on and on. There is so much to share. And that's the point, isn't it? Again, thank you so much for this award. I am honored and blessed to be able to share the new Danville story as part of the special needs story.
Broadcast. Ashley Claster. Frisco ISD teams with Embassy Suites to employ special needs students. Spectrum News.
Jonathan is a Frisco ISD graduate with intellectual disabilities. Thanks to the district, he got a job here, and now he's doing so good at work and loves his job. This happy guy is Jonathan Berry. He's a graduate of Frisco High School north of Dallas.
Well, during my free time, I like to play video games, hang out with friends.
He works here at Embassy Suites Frisco.
My main job's hotel maintenance.
Project Search is a nationwide program designed to help young adults with disabilities gain the skills to get and keep a job.
Vacant room list.
Embassy Suites Frisco and Atrium Hospitality offers the experience for interns with both physical and intellectual disabilities like autism spectrum disorder. Michael Jones with Frisco ISD works on site here at Embassy Suites as the instructor.
It helps them, give them a sense that they can be more than just finishing up with school and then go into a day hab or go into some other opportunities that wouldn't really be fulfilling.
Engineer.
50 to 60 interns in the program have gotten jobs so far, either through Embassy Suites or other places in DFW.
If it's white like this, it's still good.
The hotel's manager, Rich Lunt, has a personal connection.
You know, my wife is a special education teacher in Dallas ISD. We had a special needs daughter, Grace, and so this program is incredibly important to me. And when they came into our hotel, I really had hoped that it would be really successful because of our personal experience, and it's been more than we could have hoped for.
So beneficial that he doesn't believe the hotel could have stayed open during the pandemic without these employees.
First time you get a task like this, it sounds easy, but it's really not that easy.
He plans to work here for many years.
Hi there, my name is Ashley Claster. I am a reporter in Dallas for Spectrum News 1 Texas, and our newscast broadcasts all over the state, San Antonio, Austin, Houston. And so putting this story about Jonathan and Embassy Suites in Frisco ISD across Texas so people can see is really important to me. And it means even more that someone else took notice. Because my goal in this story and any story I do about somebody with disabilities is to show that we're just like anybody else. I do have my own learning differences and mental health issues. And I told that to Jonathan when I met him, and he and I got along great. And there was no difference with he and I talking than with me and the manager or me and my manager. And my purpose in doing these stories, and hopefully the viewers feel the same way about this, is just to normalize that we all have something, we all have something that doesn't make us standard or normal, and that's okay. And the more we talk about that, I think the more people will be willing to seek out help and seek therapy or medication, anything that could make their lives better if we talk about it more. So I'm really happy I got to meet Jonathan. And the story also meant a lot to me because I went to Frisco ISD. That's where I learned how to be a broadcaster. So just mental health is so important to me, and getting people's stories and faces out there is important to me as well. Thank you so much for giving me this award. It means more to me than you could understand.
High school student, Taylor Kronert. Forward March, student with disability excels in band. The Voice, Vandegrift's student newspaper.
High school feature, Forward March, student with disability excels in band, by Taylor Kronert, staff reporter. He stood there on the field with the rest of the band at the football game against Ellison, where they performed their competition piece, Juliet Letters, before the game. A big grin came across his face as the crowd clapped and cheered as they exited. Outside of school, Lucas takes karate lessons to help his balance. One of the things Lucas has always been passionate about is music. We put him into music lessons when we discovered that Lucas has perfect pitch, which is the ability to recognize any key or musical chord, his mother Jamie said. So when we put him in music lessons, we started with piano, and it was perfect because you can sit down and play. We've had the exact same teacher for the last 7 years who just blossomed with him. When Lucas first started high school, he knew he wanted to take along his passion of music and continue playing the saxophone, which is why he decided to join the high school marching band and their company. The first time Lucas performed on the field with the band was the pre-game performance at the Cedar Park game. I got to walk around and play music, and it was super exciting to be playing on the field in front of thousands of people, Lucas said. It's so welcoming, and so many friends see Lucas for his talents and his shining personality, Jamie said. They see far beyond his disability, and I don't even know if people realize it's cerebral palsy. They just look at Lucas because he's friendly and really enjoyable to be around. For Lucas, being in band has given him the opportunity to explore his passion for music and make friends along the way. He hopes that other people like him will take the opportunity to participate in things they want to do. I think that people should be able to participate in anything they want to participate in, Lucas said. Some things can be hard, like the actual marching part in band, but people help me, and I don't let cerebral palsy stop me from doing anything.
Okay, I am in shock. First of all, it is such an honor to receive this award, but just the fact that I'm the first person at my school, Vandergrift High School, to receive this award, as well as the first person in my school's district, it is just insane. So I'd like to thank Lucas Eppley, the person who the story is about. Thank you so much for being such a big inspiration and showing people that they can do so many different things that they want to, even if they have a disability, like with you in marching band. And to his mom, Jamie Eppley, thank you so much for allowing me to share your son's story. It was such a great hit, and just thank you so much. To my two journalism teachers, Ms. Coker and Ms. Stamp, thank you so much for not only pushing me these last 2 years, but for also believing me. This award would have not been possible if it wasn't for you guys pushing me and having me do my best. And to my newspaper team, you guys are just the best team I've ever worked with. You guys are just so awesome. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for you guys. And I just want to say thank you so much. You know who you are, and you guys are just the best. So to anyone else who has supported me and believed in me, I just want to say thank you. Everything I have done and accomplished in my last 4 years of high school and my last 2 years in journalism wouldn't have been possible without the support and feedback I have gotten. You know who you are, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Broadcast extended. Morgan's Inclusion Initiative, celebrating a world of inclusion. KSAT, San Antonio.
It's the Celebrate a World of Inclusion 12th Annual Gala, benefiting Morgan's Inclusion Initiative, brought to you by our friends at KSAT 12, and presented by KFW Engineers and Surveying, Spectrum Association Management, and Valero Energy, with your hosts Adam Caskey and Leslie Mouton.
In 1993, our park's namesake, Morgan Elizabeth Hartman, was born to popular businessman and entrepreneur Gordon Hartman and his wife Maggie. While Morgan was born with physical and cognitive special needs, it was her very special gift to inspire and change the world. That led to many individuals of all ages and all abilities to reach beyond their limitations, to take flight and to soar.
You see, it all started in 2006 while on a family vacation. Morgan was playing with some kiddos in the pool, but they didn't know exactly how to play with her. So it was right then and there that Gordon and Maggie had the inspiration to create this amazing place where individuals of all ages and all abilities could come together to learn, laugh, splash, and grow together.
So they built a place of kindness, acceptance, and friendship. But most of all, it's just a really cool place to have fun. We like to say inclusion started right here. the day we opened our doors, April 10th, 2010.
We are rocking here at Morgan's Wonderland Camp, where we're celebrating a world of inclusion. Let's take it to the top. The donations, that is. I'm out of breath and sweaty. Totally worth it, though. Love it. Yeah!
Hey, we are here at the Calypso Cove splash pad, and this is just one of 5, and each one has a theme. This is music, right?
Yes, Calypso Cove is music themed, much like our music garden over at Morgan's Wonderland, but we have 5 different splash pads, all with a different theme and different play elements, so they're all unique in their own way. We also have one riverboat adventure ride that you are actually able to get in the boats and go around. It's about 1/8 of a mile long river that you can enjoy a little safari scenery that you're there.
I remember when Morgan's Wonderland opened. I can't believe it's already been 11 years. So how long has Inspiration Island been open?
Morgan's Inspiration Island has been open since June 17th, 2017. That was actually Father's Day that year, which is very fitting for our co-founder, Gordon Hartman, who also happens to be Morgan's dad.
Together,
we are making a difference.
Together, we are making a difference.
Together, we are making a difference.
Together, we are making a difference.
Juntos estamos marcando la diferencia.
Together,
we are making a difference.
Together, we are making a difference. Tillsammans gör vi skillnad. Hej då!
Together, we are making a difference.
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 I'm Gordon Hartman, and I'm very appreciative and honored to receive the Barbara Jordan Media Award on behalf of so many individuals who work with me and behind the scenes in so many ways to assist individuals with special needs. This award means a lot, and the reason it does is it gives us an opportunity to reach out to so many people in so many different areas within this community and communities throughout this entire country, an effort to be able to express to them in a further way the importance of acceptance and inclusion of individuals with special needs. This particular production took the work of many people to be able to explain in some detail what we do, why we do it, and why inclusion is so important in our society. As a father of a special needs individual, Morgan, I am blessed that Morgan has shown me so many ways and opportunities to be able to help others in the area of assisting our friends with special needs. This particular award is something that we are very grateful for because it now gives us an opportunity to be able to tell so many others about what we are about, why we do it, and the importance of inclusion. It is with great respect to everyone involved in this, a great thank you, appreciation, and as we always say, together, we are making a difference.
I am delighted that these persons who are recipients of these awards today understand the reality that is important, crucial, urgent that it be communicated.